Good. So, very, very warm welcome, everybody, to this ninth teaching on the Mahamudra prayer. And for those of you who are watching later on YouTube, then good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. So we should start, as we always do, with a really, really excellent motivation, with a big mind. Of course, it's rather funny now. We've been looking for a couple of weeks at this thing called mind in different ways and realizing that nobody found it or saw it. So it's a bit funny to say big mind. But as you know, that means on our relative level, an inclusive mind. And in particular, of course, we include those who are our karma in this life, and those, all of them, very precious, the ones we've met, encountered, interacted with very powerfully. They're very important for us. And then, more generally, we include everyone, which in the end, if you really look, everyone is an idea. We only met the ones we met as real samples of sentient beings. So thinking of them with great love, thinking of ourselves with great love, and longing for enlightenment to be able to really, really and truly help everyone, then we say some prayers. Sonje chodon soji chonam la janchu bado dane chapsunje. Dagi jinso jipe sonamji drola penchira sanje ruparasho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe judang tempare joche. Dongal dang dongal ji judang tralwara joche. Dongal mepe dewa tampa dang nem tralwara joche. Yerin chadan ne tam tralwe. Tanyom chempola ne pare joche. Doji changchen talo naro dang mapa mela cheche kampopa tusum shecha kunchen kamapa chinshi chonje drupa zinam dang rita satsum padun drupa so sablam chaja chela nanipe nyamme drokon drapo kajula sowan depso kajula manam drupa zino nam tare chinchilo shenlo gongje kampara sumpa shen zino kunla chashen lepa dang Sede da ta chopi gomche na niko shampara me parichinche lo. Mugu gomche gowara sumpa shin nga tego jepe namana. Chundu sovan tepe gomche na chome mugu jewara chinche lo. Yang me gomche ngasira sumpa shin. Hansha tope ngo somade. Macha dekara chope gomche na gomcha lo dam chawara chinche lo. Nantong o chukra sumpa shen, chiang mayin chiang chawala, manga ropa chawe kumjena, kode yerme to pare jinjino. Deya tan shame shamawati shamata shatru ankure mam kure, mara jite karota ke yorite jovati olo yane bishuda nimale malapa, Naye kukure kaka grase, grasana om muki para muki amuki shamedawane, sawa graha bandananini krihedva, sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha, savitva buddha mudra nugatita, sava mare butsarita parishuddhi biga shantu sava mara kama. Alen sawe lama rinpoche dagye chewara pende denshola. Karen chempo gone jezonte kuson tuchi ngadrop sandu shal. So now I think I'm probably going to lose some of my customers, because these last couple of weeks, we've kind of not moved on very much. And we've been in this verse about even the Buddhas haven't seen it, and so on. Today, we're going to stay in this verse. Now, as I'd said last time, this verse is probably the most important verse in the whole prayer. It implicitly refers to so much, and we've explored it, and we've explored mind, we've explored relative mind, we've explored all those things we did, the 8 consciousnesses, and quite a lot of things. So I think now we're ready to go through this verse following the 8th Tai Situpa's commentary. If we'd have done that from the beginning, I think it wouldn't have made so much sense. But I'd like to do it now, and then to take us a little bit deeper. Now we're familiar with some of these understandings of mind, and in particular, so we know what this particular prayer is talking about when it uses words like it or mind. So, for instance, in the next verse after this one, it says, it does not exist. Even the Buddhas haven't seen. Oh no, in this one, it is not non-existent. It is not non-existent. It is not a combination, and so on. The next verse says, it cannot be shown by such statement as, this is it. It cannot be refuted by any statements, this is not it. Right? So, it. Or, in other contexts, another technical word, that. As in, Tathagata. Tathagata is one of the names of Buddha. Buddha nature is Tathagata, Garbha. It's like the womb of the Tathagata. Tata, gata means become. Tata means that. In fact, it's the Indo-European root from which we get our word that. Tata, tat. That. So the Buddha means the one who became that, it. So this could be a little confusing. So let's go through Tai Situpa's commentary first, and then try and get some clarity. So if you don't mind, I don't usually like using paper supports and looking at notes and that kind of thing. I like to do everything from the heart, spontaneously, but I think this time it's worth it. So Tai Situpa introduces this verse. It's not non-existent, even Buddhas. Let me read our translation. It does not exist. Even the Buddhas haven't seen it. It is not non-existent, being the basis of all samsara and nirvana. It is not a combination of opposites, but simultaneity, the middle way. May the true nature of mind, free from all extremes, be realized. So Tai Situpa says the meaning of the first line, it does not exist. He says, one may wonder, might this pristine mind that was explained by the Buddha, is it something that really exists? Is it a something, mind, that really exists? No matter whether it's truly established, this word they used, or real, and he says, even the Buddhas have never seen it. So let alone whether, when he says it's not truly established. Established, we're referring to logic. And you've probably seen in Tibet, the art of debate was something that became very polished. A wonderful thing. And in particular, the Gelugpa school, they just whiz at debate. They spend many, many years training in it, and it's like fast, accurate thinking. One person says something, the other refutes it like this, asks questions, tick-tack, tick-tack. You need to be totally on the ball, and your logic needs to be perfect. Otherwise, somebody's going to say, aha, dig a hole in it, or saying, you said this now, but 2 seconds ago you said that, aren't they? And so, logic. The art of debate and logic came from India. It's certainly very well developed in Tibet, and it's what you can prove or disprove. It takes years. So if you're in a Tibetan Shedra and learning this stuff, then you need to go through all the basic Buddhist thinking, the ideas, and work up through all of Nagarjuna's teachings on Shunyata, on Voidness, Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna, and so on and so on. The study takes years, and then you can only sort of argue with somebody if you've got the study under your belt. So the art of debate is developed over the years of study. So when something is properly established, that means it is proven, irrefutable by logic. So we're not going there. I can't take you there. I'm one of the things I never really pursued is debate. But, we would need, in the Shedra, they study 50 weeks a year, all day long, for 6 years, right? We've got minutes. So we're not going there. I just need to tell you that Tai Situpa says, forget about whether this is truly established, whether this can be proven by humans debating. Does mind exist? Doesn't mind exist? Whatever humans say and argue with each other and prove to each other with logic, thinking about it, it must exist because, or it doesn't exist because. Whatever humans think, he says, if there is such a thing as mind, forget about humans thinking. Buddhas must have found it. They're the best, the wisest, the most evolved human beings that ever existed. Did they ever encounter mind? No. So forget about the logic. Not only is there not a mind to be found, but Tai Situpa tells us there is not a non-existence of mind to be found. Now, this is today's theme. This is your takeaway. I think it's in 2 weeks' time we come back to these teachings, if I'm not mistaken with the dates. I think we've got Tonglen next Saturday, maybe. But anyway, your homework, your contemplation is that there is no such thing as non-existence, voidness. I can only see a few of you in my little screens, but nobody looks shocked. What did Ken just say? There's no such thing as voidness. Now, have I lost the plot? Am I launching a new non-Buddhist tradition based on Ken's ideas? No, I'm reading you the VIIIth Tai Situpa's commentary. And he says, from the sutra, which is called the Densely Arrayed Ornaments Sutra, there is not even a trace of non-existence of mind. And then there's a very famous sutra about this, the sutra requested by Kashyapa. Kashyapa in Tibetan is Ösung. So Buddha says, Kashyapa or Ösung, mind does not exist inside. It does not exist outside. Also, it cannot be found in between the two. Ösung, there is no mind to discover. There's nothing to show. There's nothing to support, nothing to perceive, none to form an idea of, none that abides. Ösung, none of the Buddhas has ever seen, or sees now, or will ever see mind. Okay, so there's no mind to be found. Now, that's we have three ways of getting wise. Okay, one way is by scriptures. So we believe the scriptures, we take them as authority, and so we have what the Buddha said and what the great accepted Buddhist masters said. So scriptural authority is one way we learn. The second way is logic, whereby we think about what's in the scriptures, and in the end, we come to the conclusion it has to be like this. Scriptures, sorry, there's a question for that scripture. It's the sutra requested by Kashyapa. In Sanskrit, that would be Kashyapa Paripricha Sutra. Kashyapa Paripricha Sutra. So first way we learn is through scriptural authority. The second way is through logic. And the third way is by direct investigation with our own mind in meditation to check out the reality, not the thinking, but the reality. When we study ideas. When we apply logic, we put those ideas through the test of logic, which is a set of paradigms, which is also ideas. When we're on the cushion, we come in direct contact with reality without the intermediary of ideas and thinking. So in Mahamudra practice, what we'll do eventually is what does Buddha say to Kashyapa? It does not exist inside. So we settle the mind, as we'll see in later verses with shamatha. We do vipassana exercises. We go as deep inside ourselves, whatever that means, as deep inside the mind as possible, to find what we call the mind, to see if we can find mind that's doing it all, right? Because we see mind on the surface, we observe when we meditate. First it's a thought, then it's a feeling, then it's a memory, then we see something, then we're distracted by this. We see what superficial mind does, monkey mind and so on. We see all of that. But the question is, what's doing it? Sometimes when we study the 12 links of interdependence, which I mentioned last week, we come in those links to the 6 gateways of perception: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations, heat, cold, nerve endings. That's the 5 senses. And then number 6 is mind, that imagines, remembers, and so on and so on. So when we talk about monkey mind, it says there's a monkey in a house with 6 windows, and the monkey is jumping from window to window. So the monkey mind, the everyday busy mind, now it's looking at something, now it's listening to something, now it's remembering something, now it's toying with ideas. We see the monkey is like jumping from window to window. So when we go deep inside, we're not concerned with the windows, but we're trying to find the monkey that does all this. What is this mind that sees? What is this mind that gets sad? What is this mind that's jealous and hateful? What is this mind which is devoted? And so on. What's doing all of this? So it says, you won't find it inside. You won't end up finding, yeah, this is what's doing all of this. It's not like with your device, whatever you're looking at this on, your computer or your phone. You can really say, mainly what's going on in here is in the chip. And the chip's accessing the memory and the chip's doing this, but the chip is really what's doing all of this. You won't find something that's always the same that's there, that you can say, that's mind. Now, in the text, in the way that language has to be used to teach, and Buddha had to say something to people in words they could understand. Buddha couldn't just sit there kind of vibing, this is it. He had to use words, because people understand words. They have to start somewhere. So we have to use words like mind and so on. But when you go inside, you can't find something that you can say, that's mind. And then if we look outside, anywhere in the entire universe, in the nature of, like we do in abstract thought, in the nature of molecules and energy and quantum physics or whatever, chemicals. If we study not deep inside ourselves, but life in general, you won't find it. Or as some mixture on the borderline between the two and so on. Nobody ever found it. But they didn't find also, now this is where you've got to think, right? This is where you've got to think. They didn't find an absence of mind. They didn't find mind. They didn't find mind. If you look 24 hours a day for the next 10 years, you won't find mind. But you won't find an absence of mind either. As something, as an absence. Now remember, we played around with this last week. I asked you about crocodiles in your room, right? And asked you then to meditate on the absence of crocodile in your room. If you meditate, or try and meditate, you can't, but if you try to sit in an absence, what are you doing? What does it mean? How many things are absent in your room, or actually in your mind, in your meditation right now? The list will be endless. The planet Uranus. There's an absence of the planet Uranus in your room, and well, there was in your mind until I mentioned it. There's an absence of a garden fork. There's an absence of everything on Wikipedia, more or less, is absent. How is the absence of a garden fork and the absence of Uranus, the planet, different? What are we talking about? You cannot sit in an absence of something. You can sit in the idea of an absence of something, but that's not the same as the real absence of something. So no Buddha ever found mind that's doing all of this. But even more than that, they never found an absence of mind. So if you've got the 6 years to do the logic, in the end, this will make total sense. And you can debate with each other like Tibetans do, swinging your mala and clapping your hands and blowing each other's minds. We don't have that time, but I just need to tell you what Tai Situpa says. So we need to take it away until we've got it straight. But it becomes very important because lots of Buddhists are sitting in what they think is shunyata, voidness, emptiness, absence of self. So what's going on? So from the Prajnaparamita scriptures, Tai Situpa quotes, "There is no mind in mind." So what we generally call mind, very, very convenient word. I can use it. It makes sense to you. I can say your mind, my mind, mind. You're all happily going along with this. It's not like I made up some word like kumbubble. And I said, you're kumbubble, or something like that. You say, what? If I say your mind, it makes sense to you. So in the Prajnaparamita, it says, there is no mind in mind. If we unpack that, we'd say there is no lasting, fixed, absolute mind to be found in the relative play of mind. And this is the whole point. The relative play of mind, all the things which manifest through interdependence, creating each other, dependent on each other, never staying still one moment, that great web net of Indra that I mentioned last week. That's the play of the mind. But in there is no mind, which would be one fixed, ultimate thing to find. There is no mind. But there is the nature of that mind, which is nothing can be found. And then also Tai Situpa quotes not just from the Mahayana scriptures, but from the Tantras. There's one Tantra called the Manifest Awakening of Vairochana. And in there, he says, mind, the master secret one. That's what he calls it, the great secret, like a great guru mind, the master secret one. Has never been, is not, and never will be seen by the Buddhas. And then in that same Tantra, it says, how should one properly understand one's own mind, this thing you're in, that you're listening to, what's attending this teaching, what goes to bed with you at night, what observes nature as you go through your day, this mind of yours. How should one properly understand one's mind to be? Like this. Even if you search thoroughly for it having any aspect, a color, a shape, a location, color, shape, location. Like it could be pink, cubic, and in your right nostril. Did you find it? No. You never know. We have to look. I mean, in the end, there may be something pink cubic in your right nostril that's doing all of this. You can't know until you've checked it out. So every time in meditation, as we're in this living moment, which is all we've got, and it feels like mind, your awareness, your intelligence, you, whatever it is you are that knows, you the knower. And we try and find it. What's its color? Does it have a color? Where is it? Is it deep inside me? Is it filling everything I experience? Does it have any shape? Does it have anything? Has it got a smell? We need to check it out. Maybe it does have a smell. You can't tell until in the moment that you feel your own knowing, your own awareness, and you check it out. You have a quick sniff and see if it's got its own smell. Does it feel soft? Does it feel hard? Is there anything we can say about the mind that's doing all of this? Does it have any form, sensation, perception, any thought configuration or consciousness? Is it something which is, or is it something which belongs to something else? Is it something we can catch? Is it pure? Is it impure? Is it a field of the senses? Is it anything in any way that we can observe? And if you look with the eyes of meditation, this is, you will never observe it. Now, although we know, because it's in the scriptures, that none of the Buddhas has ever found it, is finding it, or will ever find it, that's no use to us. That's their story. I had one Dharma teacher who said, look, it's like this. Reading what the Buddha said is like reading somebody else's love story. He says, it's not what happened to you. He says, you've got to fall in love yourself before you know what's really going on. It's like with children. They say, does mommy love daddy? A little child asking that is never going to understand what goes on between mummy and daddy, and what love can mean in all of its things. So he said, reading what the Buddha tells you about mind, about shunyata, all these things, it's like reading why could the Buddha say that? Because Buddha had spent 3 cosmic eons meditating and discovered it for himself. So we need to discover it for ourselves. It's the whole point of Mahamudra practice. Because somebody said it, even if it's a Buddha, is not going to help us too much. Sets us on the right track, helps us to check our own experience, but we have to experience ourselves. So it says, that is the portal to the totally pure bodhicitta of a bodhisattva. So now we're looking at absolute bodhicitta. How do we find absolute bodhicitta? By looking at our relative mind as it does what it does, trying to find if there's any ultimate mind in there, something doing all of that. So now, the next point that Tai Situpa brings up is about Mahamudra being a bit special and its language being a bit special as opposed to the logical things we find in usual Mahayana middle way thinking. So he says, therefore, when the Buddha says, we find it in the scriptures, the Buddha says he sees Dharmadatu just as it is. Or, what did we just say? None of the Buddhas has ever seen it, will ever seen it, is seeing it. So Tai Situpa says, therefore, when the Buddha says he sees Dharmadatu just as it is. And that mind is apperceptive awareness. It knows itself. Buddha is expressing how wisdom's great vision views the Dharmadatu, which is free of limiting constructs and has not even a particle's worth of properties to behold. There's not even a particle's worth of properties to behold, yet Buddha says he sees it. What's going on here? He's expressing in our world where we need to hear words, in our world which is dualistic, in our world where we're on a path and we need to go one step forward on that path. What Buddha is doing is expressing in our world what is beyond any expression, that is beyond any concept. So let's just leave me going through Tai Situpa's commentary there, and let me try and make the point after a sip of coffee. Last week, we looked at this expression, middle way. And we saw it's not a middle that's halfway between two extremes. It's simply called middle because it doesn't get into any extreme. That's what we did last week. Now, this week, what does extreme really and truly mean? It means, let me give you the Tibetan term because there's no translation that's really adequate. Tru tral. Tru tral. Tru 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 tral. Tral tral. Tru tral. Tru tral. Now, you'll often see this translated as non-conceptual. Non-conceptual. But it's more than that. It's not just about big clanking thoughts. I think we all know those. Thinking. It means beyond anything this relative mind of ours can do. Anything our relative mind can do, can get into, is a tru. That's the meaning of this word tru. Tru feels like you lost it. That's the feeling of the word tru. So let me give you an example. I think I gave it last week already, of walking a tightrope. Or maybe if that's too dramatic, just walking a straight line along the floor. Okay. And you walk one foot in front of the other and you teeter a bit, or you actually step off the line. That's true. You lost it. You lost it. You kept it, you kept it, you kept it, you lost it. That's the feeling of this word true. All of Mahamudra deep practice depends on you being introduced to what we call the nature of your mind, the nature of your mind, by your guru. Once we've been introduced to that through meditation practice, we remain in that space. But of course, through ancient habit, we lose it. We trip. So to try and make this a bit more light-hearted, I think I've got some images to share with you. Simple. This next bit's simple. We can cool down our brain for a bit. Okay, so can you wave a hand if you can see clouds? Yeah, clouds. So theoretically in this picture, or ideally, there's only clouds. There's no, you can't see beyond the clouds into space, right? There are white clouds, there are dark clouds. This is our relative mind, a creature of habit, lifetimes of habit, all of this life's habits, where we get the pleasant, the unpleasant, the good, the bad, busyness, peace, up and down, black and white. So when we come to Dharma, when we come to meditation, it's non-stop. It's non-stop. It's relentless. Our mind is busy all the time. And then we learn to settle it. We practice shamatha, we get more instructions. So then, now I think this image should change, and that one. Yes, this one. Okay, can you see different clouds now? Yeah, good. Then through our extensive Mahamudra practice, we get introduced to the nature of our mind, to our own Buddha mind, our own Buddha nature, shunyata. So that's like the little blue, you see now you've got a bit of blue peeking through. Okay. Still a lot of black and white cloud, but there are moments of blue. So in our meditation, once we've been introduced by our guru to the truth of mind, to the Buddha within, and so on, whatever you call it, then we will meditate, and how can you say, you'll be in that clarity. And then you'll lose it. Black and white clouds, white cloud, black cloud, white cloud. And then it comes back again through the power of your practice, blue sky. So we're in this kind of a world where we have glimpses, more and more glimpses of the truth of mind. And that puts the black and white clouds in a very different perspective, because now we're in contact, not all the time, but a lot of the time, with the blue sky that's beyond. Okay. So then, now in this next image, oops, now we're above the clouds. So now, after a lot of practice and more glimpses of the mind, and glimpses that last longer and longer and start to become closer to each other, in the end, something flips. It's called first bodhisattva level. And our default state becomes the space. But of course, the clouds are all there. And in this particular picture, taken from a mountaintop by the look of it, then the clouds, you see, they're still pretty close. I think there's one more. Okay, now we're high up above, it says gati gati paragati parasamgati bodhisoha, gone, further gone, even further gone, totally gone, Bodhi, Buddha. But down there in the clouds, you see those clouds there, underneath those are beings experiencing weather. They're still all the way under there. So it's not as though there's only space. But it's different. Okay, so there were the images. And so true means losing that primordial clarity, losing the Buddha mind, to go back into your Dharma habit, into your karmic habit mind. That's true. Tral means there isn't, there's none of that. without. It means without trucha. So often you'll find that as non-conceptual. So tru, you'd spell it T-R-O umlaut, and tral, T-R-A-L, truchal. It's a Tibetan sound that you can't really put into English. Tr is kind of a T and not a T, and the kind of an R, but the tongue doesn't move so much. Truchal. So anything our habitual historic mind does, thinks, remembers, it doesn't need to be words in the head thoughts. I think when people see non-conceptual, they think you don't have a narrative going on, a narrative of words, but it's more than that. Either we're in the timeless, changeless Buddha mind, always was, always is, full of all the blessings and the Buddha qualities, or we're not. We lost it. So truchal. So our middle way, like walking perfectly on the tightrope or walking along the line without tru, our middle way is to be without, let's just say concept to make it easy, or to be free of the habitual mind. In actual practice, if we go back to our clouds, being free of the habitual mind, at first when we find the freedom, will be it's still there, but it doesn't get you anymore. You're not carried by it anymore. First place, it doesn't make you do the things that you'll regret afterwards. It's disempowered. So that might take some training, some resistance. But then not only do you not do the things you might regret, get involved with the things that you might wish you didn't get involved with later, but it just doesn't have any power. It's like noise that's there. It's like traffic noise in the distance or something like that. It just doesn't have the power to get you anymore. It's still there. And then that being there will get weaker and weaker and weaker as the Buddha mind presence and blessing gets stronger and stronger through the various bodhisattva levels. So what Tai Situpa is saying, if we go back now to the text, he says, Buddha has to say things like, I see Dharmadatu just as it is, so that we understand. Buddha understands mind just as it is. He's not saying, hey man, I'm seeing something, right? I've got it. You can't see it, but I can see Dharmadatu. One day you'll see it too. It's like auras. Some people see auras around people, others don't. It's not like one day you might see auras. It's not like I can see it, you can't. It's just the Buddha has to use that language so that what? So that what he's telling us is, I see Dharmadatu. I see Dharmadatu. Dharma, what does Dharma mean? Things, phenomena. What does Datu mean? It means, actually it's got many meanings. I think it's got 18 meanings in Sanskrit. Datu means the element. It's one of the main words for the element. Here it means more like the expanse or the space in which things happen. The space of mind in which reality manifests. So Buddha's saying when he says, I see Dharmadatu, not that there's a thing called Dharmadatu that he sees, voidness that he sees. It means I see how everything that manifests in each moment, each thing, is interdependent. Is interdependent. Therefore, it has no own entity, own reality, because everything it is depends on something else, is connected with other things in this net of Indra. Because of that, nothing can have own reality. It's devoid of own reality. But there isn't a voidness of own reality that the Buddha can be in, like the absence of crocodile. So when Buddha says he sees Dharmadatu, Buddha sees with the eyes of jhana, prajna, wisdom. Buddha's profound clarity of mind and wisdom knows the interdependence that's present in each moment. Like just now, there's on a relative level, just to give an example, there's all these molecules that make Ken and Ken's brain and Ken's talking that's being processed by Zoom, that's sending goodness knows what through space, that's fiddling with your screen and making images. And you there with your eyes, ears, and everything are observing this, and it's making sense in your relative mind. I mean, goodness me, the interdependence that's happening each second, just now. And the sense that I make to you, what does all of that depend on? Everything you read, thought about, were told, received teachings, observed in life. Every second, so the Buddha knows without having to think. So Buddha sees Dharmadatu. It doesn't mean Buddha's there kind of, I see the Dharmadatu, man. Kind of some big empty space. There is no absence. So we're going to carry on to look at that. So first of all, now in this section I was reading, Tai Situpa says, you see, when Buddha says things like, I see the Dharmadatu, it says, you might think when you read this in Mahamudra that this is in contradiction with so much. The very famous scriptures, like the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha's sutra on going to Sri Lanka, very famous Mahaman sutra, he says, mind cannot see itself. Buddha. And he gives examples. He says, the sword blade can never cut itself. And if you've got a sword, no matter how sharp, no matter how fast you move it, it can never catch itself to cut itself. Can it? Even super, 1,000,000 times faster than I could do it, the sword blade can never catch itself because it's always ahead of itself. Or it says, or like a fingertip cannot touch itself. One fingertip can touch another fingertip, but a fingertip can't touch itself. So it says, in that way, mind cannot see itself. So what Tai Situpa is saying is what Mahamudra is saying. Buddha sees Dharmadatu. Is that in conflict with mainstream Mahayana scriptures, which says it can't see itself? It's like a sword can't cut itself. Buddha, or with another one, it says, is mind self-illuminating? And so, let's forget that one. Well, I'll tell you briefly. Okay. You might think that a butter lamp can illuminate itself. But the word illuminate means shine light where there wasn't light before. And the very nature of a butter lamp is not that it was ever darkness. It is light itself. So light cannot illuminate light. Anyway, we don't have time for that one. So In the next section of Tai Situpa's commentary, he says this is all about Buddha nature, the nature of mind, the true Buddha nature of mind. Buddha means awakened nature of mind. Because mind is whatever it is, then everything can manifest. And the fact that, I go more slowly, because of the nature of mind, clarity, anything can manifest, anything. The very fact that anything can manifest is proof in itself that mind itself has no own nature. To give you an example, if the nature of mind was to be blue, everything that manifested would be tinted blue. If the nature of mind was kindness, everything that manifested would have a feeling of kindness. If the nature of mind smelt of horse manure, everything that manifested would smell of horse manure. The very fact that in 1 second this can be the reality, and in another second that can be the reality, is proof in itself of what this mind is. In the beginning prayer, or the short prayer to Vajradhara, it says, nothing whatsoever, it can manifest as anything whatsoever. This is how we need to understand mind. When Buddha says he sees the Dharmadatu of mind, is with his deep wisdom, mind knows, sees just how that is. And it is beyond words. It is beyond concept. There is no way we can think that we'll ever get our heads around it. And this is the problem. We want to get our heads around it. We want answers. And this is why once we get into Vajrayana practice and Mahamudra practice, then we have to be prepared to be in a rather scarier place where our preconceptions no longer, how can you say, we're in a no man's land of constant surprises. We can't bring our conceptual intellectual baggage. We can't bring our old paradigms and sort it all out. We have to go to a new place where all of that baggage, all of those ideas and frameworks that we've built up that keep us safe, enable us to survive in life, enable us to negotiate minute after minute, situation after, we have to be prepared for them to go. So every time we fall into truth, we lost it. We fall into habitual mind activity. Now, what I need, I won't be able to do all of the commentary in this session, and then we must move on in the next session on this. To come back to this point of thinking there is a voidness or a Dharmadatu, which would be just an empty space. It's a deep topic, a deep question here. We have to get some, how can you say, some idea of what's going on. So we're going back now in the commentary to this scripture that's called the densely arrayed ornaments. And it says that which is called it, or just that, cannot be broken down into any components or properties. We're talking about Buddha mind. Let's use the word Buddha mind, or it, or that, or just that. It's beyond the range of the intellect. The purpose of pointing out the absence of this and the absence of that, all our ideas about something existing, is for liberation. But also we must avoid the great evil, Tai Situpa calls it, of clinging to emptiness, which is even more vile than the view of existence. Listen to this, is the language of a most elegant and eloquent, one of the most eloquent and elegant Buddhist masters that ever existed. An amazing scholar, master of the Tibetan language. He doesn't use words loosely. The great evil of clinging to emptiness, which is even more vile than a solid view of existence. So from, it just says a sutra, it doesn't say which one. It says, if you cling to a personality, and your ego is as big as Mount Meru, that's relatively simple to correct. But grasping at a no-self isn't that easy. Okay, you've got ego, self, pride, jealousy. It's there in your face. You sit down and practice. You're fed up with, I'm fed up with Ken, the proud Ken, the jealous Ken, all of those Kens. Ego, all right. Now, but it can be sorted. What it says is, it's okay. That's relatively easy to fix. But then if we get our Buddhism about shunyata, emptiness, voidness, wrong, and we start getting into the idea of a void, or nothing exists, and we're kind of pickled in that idea of non-existence, then we're in trouble. It is a great evil. Clinging at the absence, the emptiness. They're called in other texts, they're called the pundits of emptiness. He says it's even more vile than having a huge ego. So, okay, we come to Dharma to get rid of our ego so we can be friends for the world. Great. But if you fall into the trap of wrong understanding of shunyata, emptiness, then you're in deep trouble. So then we go into some logic and scriptures about that. So, and as I mentioned last time, it's quite simple. Most of the teachings on voidness, Nagarjuna, a lot of Longchenpa, and so on, all of those things in the basic level of Dharma, we have remedial voidness that teaches us about non-ego. It gives us the example of the chariot, how, the chariot, if you take it apart, there is no such thing as a chariot, because it's just a wheel and an axle and a flatbed and something to pull it. You can take it apart. So there's lots of taking apart, remedial voidness, where we see that we are not a fixed Ken. I'm not a fixed Ken. I'm the 5 aggregates. Each of the aggregates has its own subdivisions. We can go down, down, down and find components. Because there are components, there is no one thing, no one fixed thing. And we see the components change, so the whole changes. We can deconstruct ego. In Mahayana Buddhism, we can deconstruct not just persona, personality, but all of our fixed projections about things. Remedial voidness, which teaches us to deconstruct. It's a remedy, as I mentioned last time with the laxative. If you're constipated, you need the laxative. But then if you get hooked on the laxative, you're in deep trouble. And you're literally in the shit. I mean, you really are. So this is what's being said here. We have to be very careful with remedial voidness to use it properly. If we go back to the simple one about the chariot, there's a huge elephant in that room. It's okay, the chariot's no more than the wheels and the axle. You can't say when you put them together, there is something more, but there is something more, which is function. A wheel can't carry a ton of hay. An axle by itself can't carry a ton of hay. You put those things together, you can carry a ton of hay. You break yourself down to the 5 aggregates. Okay, and each one's made of this, but then there you are functioning. We can look at the absence of many things, all of Nagarjuna's teachings, 21 chapters on shunyata, of everything, even cause and effect and so on. Great, it helps us, it's a remedy, but once what's remedied, what needs to be remedied has been remedied, then we need to put our mind back to the bigger picture. Once we've got ourselves out of the causes of suffering. So he says, there's a sutra, it's called the Sky Treasury Sutra. The wise here means bodhisattvas in the 10 levels, the wise. Bodhisattvas in the 10 levels. The wise do not subscribe to views of real or views of not real. Emptiness is just a verbal expression. The sound does not contain emptiness, which is not a sound nor an expression. Therefore, what is called emptiness, although it is taught by all the Buddhas, is not something that can be expressed. Now we come to the key point in this quotation. When something is said to be empty, what that means is it is inexpressible. I think this is very useful because when you read texts or hear teachings and they say, you hear the word empty, the image in your mind of empty space is one thing. If you replace it systematically, every time you hear empty, you think inexpressible. It will be very, very helpful. It means you can't put it in a box. When you put it in a box and say, that's it, you've trued, you've lost it. So really, in the explanation, I think I've covered a lot of what's in the next verse 12, I think it is. And in fact, in Tai Situpa's commentary, he gives very little space now to this next verse, because he did explain it, explaining verse 11. It cannot be shown by any statement such as, this is it. It cannot be refuted by any statements, this isn't it. Inaccessible to the intellect. The Dharmata, or universal essence, is uncreate. May there be certainty about this ultimate truth, what is ultimate true. So it says it's uncreate. Now that's a word I think made up. But it is, create means comes about through causes and conditions. When we look into karma, cause and effect, we see there are prime causes and secondary conditions. Like the prime cause could be a seed for a flower. It's a prime cause because without that seed, that flower can never come into being. It may happen in the future, but in our present state of science, with everything you can do with manipulating molecules and so on, you won't be able to make that flower. The seed is the one and only cause for the flower. Of course, it needs secondary conditions. It needs heat, it needs manure, it needs water, it needs all sorts of things to happen so that the seed becomes something. You know, they take seeds out of pyramids that have been there for thousands of years. They didn't manifest what they were going to become until the secondary conditions were there. But you can put all the sunlight, manure, water, soil you want. Without the seed, you'll never get the rice shoot or the wheat shoot. So we have primary causes without which something can't happen. Now, in our lives, the primary cause is the karma we made in the past. And the conditions are where we did it, the people we did it with, our state of mind, so many other things. And then when it ripens, those people come back, they trigger the karma, and so on and so on. So causes and conditions in the mind, in material reality and so on, they make all of our experience. All of it. Everything is created, has been created by past causes and conditions. But the nature of the mind in which all of that happens, the nature of the mind in which all of that happens is uncreate. This mind, when it's free, when it's clear, when it's wise, is discovered it never started. It was never made by anything. It never came into being. It will never end. So the Buddha nature teachings, they start with this amazing verse: beginningless, centerless, endless. So now in this verse 12, where we're talking about it, then we're talking not so much about mind in all of its manifestations, but about the true nature of the mind, Buddha mind, as pointed out by the Guru and as brought to life again and again by us after the pointing out through our Mahamudra practice. The blue sky, when we had the clouds and blue sky, the space, the sky. So there it says, it. You know, these are words of desperation. We've seen what true is. It's when you want to put a label on something. You want desperately to think it, to know it, to think, I've got it sorted out. It must be this. It is that. Oh yeah. All of this human impulse to have it sorted, have it understood. It's beyond that. And so, so how can the Guru, how can the Buddha, if they start using precise language, they fall into definitions. So what can we say talking about the truth? What can you say? It has to be as simple as it can be. it. That's about as simple as you can get. And that's what we find in the Sanskrit. It, that, this. And these are profound words, because if you had been with the Buddha, if you were with Karmapa, great teacher, Dilgo Chensi Rinpoche, when you're with those in shared meditation and Buddha mind is sensed or experienced, and then they can say this, it. This is what Mahamudra is about, practice. It's not theory. We're looking at a prayer. It's a prayer. We're praying for something related to an understanding. Of course, it has to be some kind of theory, but about the actual practice. We're praying for what will happen in the actual practice. So Karmapa tells us, as it, this truth of mind, this, that, cannot be shown by any statement. This is it. Why? Because everything's interconnected. Everything's interconnected. There is no one thing where we can say this is it, because no one thing can be found by itself. Everything is only what it is because of other things. If you can see a bit of red on your screen anywhere, it's only red because you've got eyes that see something your brain defines as red. There's no red on the screen. They're just vibrations. It's only red to a human being. Everything depends. So there's no one thing we could say, that's it. That's Buddha. That's mind. Everything is connected interdependently. And because of that very same fact, there's nothing that isn't this mind, which is intrinsically pure. So it's inaccessible to the intellect. It's something, this essence of everything is uncreate. May we, and really and truly, may we all reach certainty about this. The title of this prayer is the definitive truth, the certain truth, Mahamudra, prayer for the aspiration. So may we all come to know what we'll never be able to put a label on, but which is and always has been the truth of you, the truth of me, the truth of everything. This we call it Dharmadatu, and all those different names. In the commentary to these verses, Tai Situpa says so many names, because we have to use them. But whatever it is, may you, may I, may all sentient beings realize it clearly, without falling in particular into this vile trap, this great evil of misunderstanding, shunyata. Sonam diye tamche sikpane, tomne nye pedranam pomchene, je ganachi palap trukpaye, sipe sole drowa drowarisho, janchob semcho rinpoche, ma je panamma, je jochik, je pa nyampa me padam, kong ne, kong do, palwarasho. Gewati nyotuda chaja chenpo drukjone, drowa chikjang malupa, de sala kamparasho. So thank you very much. And I think we won't come back to that verse next time. We'll move on now. And I don't know how today was. It did repeat some of the things we've had before, but I did feel a need to, how can you say, tease a few more things out of this thinking. So it's over to you now. I don't know if you've got anything you'd like to contribute or question you'd like to ask.
Oh, Ken, I just have to say that's an amazing talk.
Oh, good.
Amazing.
Good. I get quite nervous about these things.
You said that this was probably the most important section of the whole prayer, and I think so far I think you proved it right. There's so many questions, perhaps, but I sometimes feel that it's wrong to ask a question because you said you said so many things that were very meaningful, but you said at one stage, we want to get our heads around it. We want answers. And I think to ask a question is to just repeat that mistake of wanting answers. So thank you.
Good. I mean, it's great that we have a graduated path. I'm sure for some people, a more Zen type path, like all or nothing, must be wonderful. But it's great we've got a graduated path, because at first we can start recognizing that need for answers inside ourselves. It's almost biological. I find I can feel it in myself in the meditation. You know, certain of your juices stir, certain energies move inside. This kind of need to know, the feeling of getting an answer where you kind of feel, you know, it's like you're thirsty and you're glug, glug, glug for a fresh orange juice or something. All of that. But then, and it's very valid. It's very valid. We just need, with the teacher's help, to take it to this place that helps us glimpse what is beyond that kind of a knowing mind, something that just cuts straight through to a clarity. And I've known some people who've received the, how can you say, people call it pointing out the nature of mind. The actual word means more like an introduction to the nature of mind. It's quite nice. It's like in a social event, an introduction. Oh, Charles, I'd like you to meet Fiona. Fiona, this is Charles, you know. So, disciple, this is actually the truth of your mind. And just sit for a moment and let's do this. Okay, now you've met. Now you've met. Tai Situpa says pointing out's funny, because it's, as we've just seen, he says there's nothing you can point to. There's nothing you can point to, but you can help somebody become familiar with themselves to a very special degree. So I've known some people who, once they've got it, when that happens not all pointing outs happen successfully. I think people should know this. There's a big difference in approaching the Nyingma school and the Kagyu school. In the Nyingma school, you give as many pointing outs as you possibly can in the hope that somebody gets it. Right? So they'll give a pointing out to a room full of 100 people, many of them newcomers, they're there for the first time, and there's some kind of a pointing out, and somebody may get something, more than one person, but they tend to do that, and then gradually out of all that, people will grow and the real thing will come through. There's some good stories about that. In the Kagyu tradition, there tends to be a lot of preparation, like you do all the 3 mundros, preliminaries, the common ones, the uncommon ones, the very special ones. Then you do shamatha, you do vipassana. There's so many shamatha stages. So actually, in this text here, when you study it, that was my main practice journey, you have 51 stages of meditation practice before the pointing out. And ideally, you get some mastery of each stage before you move on to the next one. It's what people are doing with the Tai Situpa in India, or have done. So at that stage of a successful pointing out, then teachers sometimes say, now you won't need to ask any more questions.
Ken, with that said, could you give the definition of the word tral again?
Tral, the second one. Tral is a negative. It's like, you get, with words you get like unmoving, or event, non-event, Tral in language is a very simple language fixture. It means not or without. So it means there's no trapa, or without trapa, or free from trapa.
Thank you.
Trapa-less. Any of those work. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Ken, I have a question, sort of.
Oh, yeah, yes.
You said something that really helped me today. Like you used two words which really kind of, I hope also will prevent me to go to the, the emptiness fixation.
Oh, yeah.
You said beyond, and you said inexpressible.
Yes.
So that means to me, I don't know, that means to me that obviously you can't point out a mind with all the senses, that what you see and what you hear, because they're all relative and it's not that. But once you are beyond that, it means that there is some sort of an experience that you can't put into words because it's not expressible. But there is some sort of an experience that is the mind.
That's it. And it's called Dharmata. And it's this, I mentioned it a few times, but the ta on the end, that's the same as the ta in shunyata, emptiness. So it cannot be experienced as something seen, heard, any of those things, like you said. But you can't see it, you can't hear it, but it is their dharmas. Seeing is a dharma, seeing a shape, seeing a color, hearing a sound, so on. These are the dharmas, the 84,000 dharmas. So it is the nature of each of those dharmas is interdependent, and therefore there is nothing to be found in any of those moments. This nothing to be found. In each of those moments, the emptiness of the moment doesn't mean it's suddenly it becomes blank. It's just exactly the same as it was before. Exactly the same, except now there's wisdom and more wisdom. So it is the nature of the mind, but that nature is not beyond in the sense of something other. It is the nature that we're ignorant of just now when we see and we hear and we think and we remember and we make concepts and ideas and understandings. So it is the nature of this mind. This mind is dharmas, and this is dhammata. These minds are dharmas, and this is the Dharmadatu. It is the expanse, like the space expanse in which the clouds exist. So, and that is inexpressible, because once we express, not just to somebody else with our mouths, but even to ourselves, in any kind of framework, paradigm, we lose it, we trip. So it's inexpressible, yeah.
Thank you so much. It's illuminated to me so much. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so pleased. Thank you. I won't lose my job then. Good. It's the only job I've got. Pretty useless for anything else.
Not to worry. Many others.
Kim.
I just wanted to say, wow, really, that there's so much I'm going to have to sit with, but it's really the last sentence that really hit me was when you said about how, you know, everything is connected. Everything is interdependently connected. So everything is mind. And, you know, I've always thought everything is mind. How can everything be mind? It's just something that I just couldn't connect. But suddenly it's like, wow, yeah, I can, you know, it's like, it's not the light gone on, but it's a slight dimming up of something I need to sit with.
Oh,
Thank you.
great. That's
Thank you
wonderful.
so much.
Yeah. 2 verses time. Manifestation is mind, yet voidness is also mind. Understanding is mind, yet illusion is also one's mind. Origination is mind, yet cessation is also mind. Therefore, may all misinterpretations of mind be resolved. Yeah. Great.
Amazing.
And there's a thing, I didn't have time today, but this part of that verse that we've been on, in the commentary, it says there are explicit and implicit teachings in this verse. The explicit teachings are what mainly we've covered. The implicit teachings, you know, we're looking at, you know, there is no mind, even Buddhas didn't see it yet. It's the basis for all of samsara and nirvana. The implicit teaching is that all what's so-called spiritual experience, the 10 bodhisattva levels, all of what we might call sacred in terms of experience and realization, that is also mind.
Ken?
Hi, Roz.
Hi. I'm just, when you were talking about that just now, I was also very much reminded of the Heart Sutra. I'm just wondering if that's a useful, like, companion, something to read that actually also adds to this aspiration prayer.
Okay, the Heart Sutra. Okay, I have to be careful what I say because I don't want to get, okay. I don't want to be sued by Buddha's lawyers. So, the Heart Sutra isn't a sutra to start with. Okay, sutras are sutras, shastras are shastras. The Heart Sutra is not a sutra. Doesn't come from the Buddha directly. The Heart Sutra, and then the word isn't heart. In Tibetan, it's nying, which can be translated as heart, but actually it means the essence, the quintessence. So it's, there's no word sutra in the title. It's called sometimes Sheram Yinpo, the essence of wisdom. But anyway, it's popularly known as the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra has its place. What happened about 500 years after Buddha, more or less, was that the Prajnaparamita ideas started being formulated. It was the time when there was Buddhist writing. In the first few hundred years, there weren't books, there weren't Buddhist texts written. And then there were Buddhist writings, first to write down what the Sangha had learnt by heart. And then there came the various analytical texts, analyzing the Buddha's teachings. And then in those analytical texts, then we got the emergence of the Prajnaparamita teachings. And the earlier ones were a few thousand verses. And then they've got bigger and bigger ones as the whole thing of voidness was expanded into huge depth. We've got Nagarjuna's teachings. And then there was a tendency, it ended up with 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita teaching, biggest one. And then after that, there was a tendency, let's shrink it down again. And so they got smaller and smaller ones, so you get to the real essence of the meaning. And the shortest one, which sums up the meaning of the Prajnaparamita teachings, was the one we call the Heart Sutra. So it's kind of like, give it to me on one page, give it to me in a nutshell. That's the Heart Sutra. Otherwise, if you want the big version, then you've got the 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita or the 100,000 verse ones. But all of those were scriptures that emerged later. So it has its place, and the main place is its Mahayana teachings of the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, not the third turning, which is Buddha nature. The second turning of the wheel of Dharma is mainly to blow the minds of those who got too fixed in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, right? So the first turning of the wheel of Dharma is basic Dharma, basic Buddhism, which is about ego, how ego gets us into trouble, how we don't have a fixed self, how we are the five aggregates, and so on. And so the five aggregates are form and feelings and cognition and samskaras and consciousness. And then when we go down into the details of those, then the forms are what can be seen, and it's the eye is the form that sees them, and so on and so on. So what the first turning of the wheel of Dharma teachings showed people was how to deconstruct ego and thereby how to get free from suffering. It's the basic, absolute necessity for our Dharma practice. What is suffering? How to get out of it, four truths and all of that. The problem is that people learned a new language. Instead of saying I, they learned to recognize feeling aggregate happening, consciousness aggregate happening, and so on. Those things became real. They were true, whereas a one fixed ego was false. But there's a feeling that's real for the moment. Now there's a consciousness that's real for the moment. And Buddhist meditators were sitting down and actually saying what was happening, feeling, form, samskara, this, and recognizing them. That was their path. So in the second turning, now that people, assuming they have got out of ego delusion, they're in a Buddhist world of five aggregates, five skandhas and six consciousnesses and seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, all of that stuff. The 18 groups of consciousness, all those laundry lists that we learn. And then, so it says, but now it's saying, but you do realize that what you've got into now is concepts. What really is, what are you doing as you're sitting there? What's the reality that you're in? You're in a reality of impermanence, suffering, bad, and why? Ego. So it says, you've developed a conceptual framework you're projecting onto what is beyond concept, inconceivable. And so to blow their minds, it said, there's no I, there is no form, there is no this. It's the no sutra. It's not a sutra, but no form, no I, no, all the way through. And saying no one's ever found it, nobody ever seen it, it's not there. It's inviting people to look at the world they're in through the basic Buddhist teachings and to take them one step further to realize the power of references, frameworks, paradigms. So that sits there, it's remedial shunyata, remedial teachings. What we're looking at here in Mahamudra prayer is the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where shunyata posits, it doesn't negate, it posits. So the first turning negates ego delusion. The second turning negates conceptual traps, conceptual prisons. The third turning doesn't negate it. Now that you've got all your illusions gone because you've seen through them, you've negated them, now it posits that the true nature of mind with its 64 qualities, with all of its power of compassion and wisdom and so on, as being what really what really is. So the Heart Sutra is a useful step along our Buddhist way, but it's not directly relevant to these Mahamudra teachings. It belongs to a different stage of the journey. But
Thank you for that
very
clear explanation.
Yeah, of course, Karmapa and all of our Kagyu Lamas will recite it because they are teaching the way, a graduated path. It's a stage we need to go through. I mean, it's mind-blowing when you go through that. The no-no stage, the voidness which negates, it's just, you can't believe it. At first, it seems like somebody, Nagarjuna's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. What? This doesn't exist, that doesn't exist. And if you've got a good teacher and you hang on in there, by the time you get to the end of it, how could it be any other way? It's just there in your face. But it takes work. It's very, and it's work you have to go through. So of course, Karmapa will teach it, and in our Dharma centers we recite it. It's supposed to be something that has great blessing, great power to imprint those ideas into our heads. But in terms of here we're studying Mahamudra, then that is not directly relevant. Okay. Well, have a good week. I think, what day are we today? I can't remember if next week is, let me just check my calendar. Where are we? Today, 24th. So next Saturday is, yes, the 1st. So next Saturday is Tonglen, for those who are in the Tonglen group. We come back to Mahamudra in a fortnight's time. Please stay well and happy, and see you then. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Try now. Try everyone.
Bye-bye, and hello to all of those I missed at the back. I see a few faces I didn't say hello to at the beginning.
Bye, Ken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Great teaching.
Thank you, Ken.